Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Um, you all may or may not know the details, so I'll do a little introductory remarks. My name is George Hayes. I'm the Deputy Borough Manager, and I have the honor of facilitating the committee that the Borough Manager set up for this opioid remediation. It's a needs assessment to figure out which of the four areas of opioid remediation are essentially in the minds of the public and the committee members, which ones have the most need. They're all needs, but which one, if we had to get down to spending more money, let's say on one or another, to figure out what the priority is for those four needs. And we handed out a survey, if you will fill that out as well, or take it home and fill it out there. But those are the four needs, and we'll get into explaining those. And I'll kind of just introduce one at a time by name, and the committee members up here can introduce themselves. If you're not familiar with this all stemmed from a nationwide epidemic of opioids that were overprescribed and over manufactured and over distributed, so much so that almost all of the states and some territories brought a lawsuit against the distributors, the manufacturers, and the pharmacies associated with this epidemic. And that resulted in a $26 billion, with a B, settlement. And those settlement money was then distributed among the municipalities within each state, all of those who agreed to sign on. And the Matsu Borough was one of those who agreed to sign on. Out of that, it trickles down, of course, and it's per capita. And we will end up with 2.3 million of that 26 billion. And our job, or their job, because I'm not a voting member of the committee, their job is to take a look at your voices, what you say they are, and what the survey says they are. And as of about 2 hours ago, when I checked our survey, we have 221 responses to the survey right now. And I won't divulge here because it might slant the views. But we have 221, and then we'll take those into account. We'll have probably a follow-up meeting after this final. This is the final one of three meetings. We had one in Palmer, one in Willow, and then the one here. And we'll take a combination of the surveys, of the public testimony, and then the committee here will have the difficult time of trying to prioritize the four needs. And then once that happens, they will then, or I will, one or the other, will present that to the Borough Assembly. They'll make the final decision on what the priority order is. And normally they'll take into account exactly what these kind of committees offer them up. And then once they do that, they'll figure out, okay, what's the size of grants that we will give to each one of the organizations who apply for the grants? Right now, we have right at 300,000 to distribute, and each year for the next 18 years, we'll have somewhere between 50 and 150,000. And the reason that goes down so much is some of the distributors, some of the manufacturers, and some of the pharmacies have elected different year groups. It's over a total of 18 years, but for instance, one of the pharmacies is going to pay all of theirs in 1 year. One of the distributors paid their first 5 years last year. So that's why we have 300,000 this year. Then the assembly will also take a look at, okay, what are the details of the grants, not only how much, but do we only issue them for 1 year or do we issue them for multiple years? Present those to the assembly, then they'll make the final decisions. Once that happens, then the borough will send out, put on our website applications. And then anyone who is involved in opioid remediation categories with the priorities they decide off the top of my head, okay, if this is number one, we'll allocate $15,000 to each successful application for number one. Maybe the number two remediation, they might give 10,000, and then number three, you might give 5 or something similar to that. But that'll be up to them to decide, and it'll be up to the committee to make a recommendation on how much for each one of those grants and in which priority. It may be they say only the top 2, it may be, that'll be up to them. There's lots of possibilities. Once that happens, we'll get those applications back, make sure they qualify, and make sure they understand the rules, such as they have to report exactly what they spent that money on at the end of the year. They'll have to come back to the borough and report what they spent that money on. So there's accountability in the factoring of handing out the money. So at this point, I have folks here, and I'm just going to call them off in the reverse order because I usually call it off in the front order. And Leslie Chisholm is Mental Health and Behavior Health Supervisor. And each one of them are going to kind of tell you a little bit about themselves and what they do. And so, Leslie, you're up.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Chisholm. I work for the Borough School District as the Mental and Behavior Health Supervisor. I am grateful to be here to be a part of this team, to hear from you guys, to see what kind of your thoughts are around this. So thanks for being here, and I look forward to continuing to be a part of this.
Okay, that was really quick. Next up, Dawn Deaver. Dawn is a registered nurse, works at the Matsu Public. That is a state of Alaska position. Dawn.
Thank you. So my name is Dawn Deaver. I'm a public health nurse at the Matsu Public Health Center here in Wasilla. So one of the things I do as a public health nurse is participate in like harm reduction. So for our center and for public health, we provide naloxone education and provide naloxone kits to not only our clients that come to our clinic, but also to community members that come in as well. We do some outside activities, attending different fairs and whatnot that we may provide that same, education and kits to as well. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, James Savage is the Director of Operations at Dillon's Place Day One Center. So, James, sorry.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, George. First, just thank you all for showing some interest in this very important work and very important topic. My name is James Savage. I'm the Director of Operations for the Day One Center here in Wasilla. Day One is essentially urgent care for behavioral health needs. It also houses the Matsu Valley Withdrawal Management Program currently. Additionally, I'm a board member for the Alaska Mental Health Board that serves at the pleasure of the governor, and I'm also on the steering committee for the Alaska Psychiatric Institute. More importantly than that, I'm a person in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder that has been directly affected by this opioid crisis that we're discussing here this evening. This work will forever be incredibly personal for me. I work with our most acutely affected community members on a daily basis. And I love that there is this many community members here tonight to try and steer this and have an open and honest discussion about what's really going on. The reality, in my opinion, is this money is not enough. We need to ensure that we're putting it in places where there's some longevity, where there's some programs that otherwise wouldn't have capital funding and would not have an opportunity to stand up and grow. I think some of the areas that are included in the 4 that we're going to talk about here tonight have opportunities for reimbursement and for funding. And as a proponent for the underdog, I would love to see some of this funding in the community to steer it in a direction that would allow others to have opportunity for funding that otherwise wouldn't have it. So again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you, James. Next, Carl Soderstrom. He is the CEO of True North Recovery.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Carl Soderstrom. I'm the CEO of True North Recovery and also a person in recovery. It's an honor to be here with you guys and a part of this process. I think this is a unique opportunity for us as a community to come together and really decide what we want to do next. From our experience, we're seeing more and more people overdose. We're seeing more and more people incarcerated, and we're seeing more and more folks hospitalized. The trend is still going in the wrong direction. this committee and this funding creates opportunity for us to be a part of the solution. And I think it's a really unique place where we as a community can come together and share ideas. And so as folks are thinking about not only those 4 priorities, I'd love to hear ideas of ways that we could impact these 4 categories in a positive manner. And so kind of thinking in 2 terms, there is funding for the next 18 years that'll trickle in. So that would love to hear some thoughts on things that could potentially be an ongoing kind of service or grant, and also things that are, one and done. Hey, if we had $10,000, we would do X, Y, Z with it, and it would positively impact our community. Those are the kind of things that we would like to hear, along with the recommendations of priority. So we all know that every one of those 4 categories are needed services in our community, and we're not saying that one is more important than the other. Looking at a lens of where you would like to see our borough spend money is topics, but understanding that they all have value in ways is I think important. So thank you for letting me be a part of this process, and thank you guys.
Thank you, Carl. The last of the 5 committee members is Michael Carson. He's the president of the Mat-Su Opioid Task Force, vice president of My House, which is a homeless youth center, and vice president of True North Recovery. Michael.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. Your voice is extremely important. First things first, I wanted to thank Deputy Hayes for his leadership on this. It has been quite an honor and privilege to be part of this process, and also the colleagues that are sitting at the table here. I know that they're all very dedicated to the work that they're doing, and I know they're doing it every day. And I know, having known them for some of them for many, they talk about the friends they have lost and how tired they are of burying those friends. And we know Alaska has been hit extremely, extremely hard with the opiate epidemic, especially due to fentanyl. Alaska had the highest increase in drug overdoses per capita, and 75% of those were driven by fentanyl. And we know that fentanyl is 50% more powerful than heroin and 100% more powerful than morphine. And so this, as Carl and James have mentioned, is an incredible opportunity for this community to come together, first raising awareness, and then joining the good fight in being part of this process. So really, really grateful for these meetings. And it's my understanding that 1 out of 3 Alaskans have been directly affected by the opiate epidemic one way or another. George mentioned $26 billion from this opioid distribution settlement. Just for a little bit of background, the state divided that up, and 15% went to 9 regions, which Mat-Su is one of those. Wasilla received some money. There was a threshold of each community had to have a population of at least 10,000, and the state is receiving 85% of the money that's coming to the state. And there's some legislation that has been introduced by Governor Dunleavy to invest part of that. So my colleagues mentioned stretching that over a long period of time. We didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take us a while to get out of here. And then Deputy Hayes mentioned the reporting process. This is not in the stipulation, but I would hope that the Assembly would look out outcomes, ensuring obviously where the money goes and how it's spent, but if they hit the outcomes, if they hit the benchmarks, and that could be a process for renewal. But that's still all a work in progress. That's kind of out of my wheelhouse. I'm all just about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, so I'll let George handle that end of the wheelhouse, and I will just keep coming back and thanks again for being here. And especially wanted to thank all of the committee members. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with such fine people that are just, in the trenches every day, trying to save lives. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Michael. Well, as previously noted, we're here to hear your opinions on what you think the greatest needs are in the borough, and kind of if you can tell us why, and a little bit about maybe yourself, if you'd come forward and give us your name first, and then just let us know what you're thinking.
I'm hungry, so I've been working all day. My name is Norm Langley. I've been in the field for about years, working in substance abuse. And right now, I'm working at Dylan's place. I have the privilege of being at Dylan's place. And the need right now is trying to get people into treatment. We're sending people everywhere, all across the state. Down southeast, out to the ranch, up north. I mean, we're bursting at the seams here. We're trying to place people. So for me, as the counselor at day one, that's what I'm seeing as a need, is trying to get them into a program. And we're referring everywhere to every program, Set Free, like I said, Nugent's Ranch, what's the one down in southeast? Rainforest. So our case manager is just, and so we need more facilities, big time. And on another part, I like this about education. I would love to educate the community, educate parents, get the parents involved, get the family involved somehow, whether it's in the schools. I mean, I love that I have somebody here from the schools. We need to get more education out to students and to their parents and to the families. Because for me, as someone that's done this for the last 14 years, this isn't an individual problem. This is a family problem. And we're all family. We're out here in the Valley. I've had the privilege and the honor of working here in the Valley for the last 10 years. And so I feel like the Valley is family. So we need to educate our family what addiction is, what it's all about. And I love what y'all are doing. I'm honored to work with you guys. Another thing, it's not on this list, but one thing I thought of recently in the last few years is a training facility out here in the Valley for substance abuse counselors, case managers, peer support specialists. I know we have online stuff, and I know we have RAID-ACT, and I know we have NAID-ACT, and we have SAMHSA. But a lot of people now are doing it online. And personally, I am so honored and grateful that I had the opportunity to go in person to trainings, to learn from people that have been there for 5, 10, 15 years and get their knowledge and go up to them and say, DBT, what is MRT, what is, and learn. Online, it's different. I honestly don't like online. Why can't the Valley have its own training facility to teach counselors, to behavioral health, case managers, peer support, anybody that wants to get into this line of work? Why can't we have our own training facility? Why not? And we can teach them the naltrexone and how to administer and all in one place. Why not? If there's a family member or family involved with something, why not send them to this facility and we could teach them Prime for Life, ADIS, some kind of educational program? Why not? So that's right now, as somebody that's working on it, we're at 100% right now at day one, and we're literally trying to find places to put people. So treatment would be, for me, my sense, someone that's been in this field for 14 years and have lost family and my best friend in November, and he overdosed. And I just got in contact with him. And he's like, sorry, I'm trying to figure out this online stuff and this FaceTime and da-da-da. And a month later, he overdosed. So a lot of us have been impacted. I've lost clients, and I've been doing this for 14 years. So we need more treatment. Like Like I said, we have great programs that that's why we refer them to them. We don't mind. Valley, you guys all work together. I love it. I've said that before in opioid task force meeting. I love how when I worked in Anchorage, it felt like they were all working in silos. Nobody shared, nobody referred people. Out here, we refer people. I love Set Free. I love elsewhere because I know they're going to get treatment. But we are bursting at the seams here. Just trying to find somewhere to send them. So I appreciate y'all. I'm going to go eat dinner now.
Just one quick, thank you, Norman. I'm sorry to hear about your loss. I really appreciate you mentioning families. We are the Matsu Opioid Task Force is very engaged with upstream primary prevention, and we believe that parents are vital partners battling the opiate epidemic. And we know that parents are children's first teachers.
Yeah.
And so I really want to thank you for acknowledging that family piece. And then as a second part to that, we're hoping that the school district can become, the insurance policy that every student once a year is able to hear a lesson on the neuroscience of addiction, tolerance, dependence, some of those important definitions. But now, because of fentanyl, one kill.
Right.
And so I think it is imperative that parents know how dangerous that can be. And the DEA just came out at the end of the year that now 6 out of 10 pills have a potential fatal overdose. It used to be 4 out of 10. And some of those don't even have the promised drug. They've done some lab tests on Oxycontin, and there was no Oxycontin. There was no fentanyl. It was actually heavy metals, arsenic, rat poisoning, cement, heavy metals, mercury. It's some really toxic stuff. So I think that information is imperative for us to get to parents, and so they can have that important conversation. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah,
Norm.
and I would love to offer myself if I wasn't so busy working as we have, because what I hear from our clients is giving up on them because they're so messed up to get back with their family. And they're not all bad. It's not always the family gave up on me. They just don't know what to do. You know what I mean? Where do I go? And then somebody tells them, hey, out in the valley, they have day one, they have, you should go check out True North. I mean, I've literally had guys, the mom was at the bedside, and one of our guys, man, I cannot stress enough about our crisis team, was standing there talking to the mom, and he woke up and our guy said, do you want help? And the guy broke down and cried and said, all he saw was True North. And he's like, I really want help. I'm ready. You know what I mean? As I'm meeting with them, we're talking about how they let down their kids, they let down their loved ones, their significant others. We get people from Anchorage who said, go get help or get out. You know what I mean? Because the family doesn't know what to do. And so I've always said with substance abuse treatment, we're putting a Band-Aid on a major wound because we're only fixing one part of the problem. Why don't we do family counseling? Why isn't that something that's practiced? In 2010, at these RADAC trainings outside while we're all smoking cigarettes, I was like, why aren't we helping the family? Why aren't they part of the program? Why aren't they coming into the residential programs, the outpatient programs, and being part of it? Whether it's through Love and Logic or strengthening families or some kind of family component, we should be implementing it in every program because the family should be part of the problem. Look at homelessness, you look at addiction, you look at any of the crises that we're dealing with. It's not an individual problem, it's a family problem. And again, we are family. I mean, I don't know how y'all feel, but you're all my brothers and sisters. And I want to educate and help people. I taught Prime for Life. I taught ADIS. I've taught a lot of different classes, even Love and Logic. And I loved it that it gave me a different perspective and point of view. And when I did it in a non-judgmental way, where people were there because they got a DUI and they're like, well, I'm not one of those people. I'm not an alcoholic. And I'm like, I'm not saying you are. Let's educate you a little something, something. And then by the end of the class, they were like, thanks, Norm. I now know a little bit more about addiction. So this education and training and stuff, I mean, if we can get more, start our own training facility, we shouldn't have to run to Anchorage and go to training. Why can't we do it here? We have a wealth of knowledge in these rooms on this panel that can teach classes. Not that I'm volunteering. But I would. I mean, I was actually asked by RADACT if I can do a class on stuff, and I've had the privilege of training other counselors. I love it. At day one, I don't mind bringing in the peer support and educating them what I know about the ASAM, what I know about motivational interviewing, what I know about DBT, because I have a wealth of information. And so family is just one part that I really feel strong about, maybe because of my own family and my own issues. But what I see with my clients, I don't know if any of you know the spiritual wheel or the wellness wheel. If you ask anybody, what's the most important thing on that wheel? What's the number one answer? Family, every time. And I go, wrong answer. You need to take care of yourself first. Then you can take care of your family. But why do they say family? Every one of them says family, number one. I'll even say, let me guess, family. So this is something that I feel strongly about. But right now, if this is my only 4 options, where I work, I would say treatment. Because we're bursting at the seams. We're sending them to every program that we can. And I've been on the front line for 14 years. I've seen this. We need more programs. I mean, we're Alaska. We should be able to have programs everywhere. Recently, I was told that we might be opening another program somewhere else. There might be a thing we might need some personnel. And I said, well, if there's a problem, then send me. I feel so dedicated about this. I'm willing to relocate if you guys open it. Send me. That's how strongly I feel that we need this. Because I'm seeing Dylan's place at 100%, like right now, all the time now. We lose a couple, we get a couple, we're down to 2, we're back up to 8 and like overnight. Literally like 2-3 days ago, we were down to like 2 or 3, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're back up to 100% again. So I feel strong about this. Treatment, we need treatment, but education for the family. And why not a facility where we can train counselors, peer support specialists, and case managers? So any other comments, questions? I'm going to go.
No, thank you, Norm. I appreciate that. And I think, yeah, I agree. I think I've only been involved in, and I've learned so much in the last 2 months that I've been with the committee here and kind of spinning up to figure out a little bit of this. But almost everybody I talk to has somebody, a relative, a friend, who is an addict of some kind of drug, some kind of substance.
Right.
And I think it affects us all, certainly as a community. So thank you, Norm.
I would say about 100% of our clients who are coming through have family or friends that have
Yeah.
lost. And that's why they come in. I don't want to die. You know what I mean? And I'm like, ugh.
Well, and I have a son who is an addict and he's 11 years clean now.
Right.
So absolutely, I think most of us have somebody who's affected. So
Right.
thank you.
I appreciate you guys. Thank
bet.
you.
My name is Davita Baumgartner, and I'm.
Can you turn the mic on there so they can hear you, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. My name is Davita Baumgartner, and I am a recovering addict and a mom who happens to have her daughter and her boyfriend here with me. I guess I second everything he said. Treatment, but more specifically, I realize with what given to you at this point in time, obviously that wouldn't address what I'm bringing up. But even with my own experiences with what I've gone through recently with my own daughter in looking for help for teenagers in this state, it's unacceptable. It is absolutely unacceptable. That I can think of like one or two places possibly that maybe can do residential level treatment for teens. So we can go into the schools and talk about prevention. We can go into the school, we can do all that, but then we get those teens that have already been sucked under and we have nowhere to send them for rehab. That just to me doesn't add up in this valley. And so I just wanted to come here and share that as what I felt a very obvious need. I've seen one friend after another of my daughters who is struggling with some form of addiction out here in this valley. It's like a broken record, and and when they hit that point of crisis and they aren't old enough to go into a detox facility, their options are the ER rooms and that's it. And then from there, the options are also limited. And I've spent the last 2 weeks of my own searching and trying to understand what is out there and how to find it and what are the chances of even getting into it. Because I'm sure the demand is high. And so it feels like I'm searching for a needle in a haystack right now. And so, I believe in all four of those areas, but specifically rehab for teens in this state. Huge gap. Like, if we can't save our youth, what are we doing? And that's just kind of, that's what I came to say. That's all. All right.
Are you still searching for adolescent residential? Are you familiar with ARCH run by Volunteers of America?
I just filled out the app.
Wonderful. There's also two down in Southeast. One's Ravensway and one is Crossings. But you're absolutely true. It's pretty slim pickings for anybody under 18 for any kind of services. But ARCH is a wonderful program. And they have partnered out in the valley with My House, the Runaway Drop-In Center.
Okay.
And so we're hoping that we can continue that partnership. So I'm glad you were able to find that.
Yeah. So, I don't know, because I know some of you guys are treatment places, and I don't know what all is involved with opening up a teen rehab. But if I could use my voice to say, hey, yesterday already, then I'll do that. But it starts young. It starts young out here. And that's what I've been seeing. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Davida.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Davida.
All right.
So if
Oh.
if there's anything that our team at Day One can be of service to you, we're located at 2650 East Broadview, right directly behind Evangelo's. We've got an amazing walk-in crisis service. We're well connected with a lot of other adolescent treatment programs, and we'll do anything we can to help you and your family. So please stop by.
Okay. I did not know you served adolescents.
Loosely.
Okay. Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Come on up.
I wear the mask because I had a COVID exposure. I'm negative, but I don't want to harm anyone. I guess the mic is on. My name is Micah McQueen. I'm a recovering addict. I am an RN. I'm a professional. I'm a recovering addict, and I'm a mother of my son is currently in treatment. I've been involved in 12-step programs since I was 10 years old. I've been using when I was 12. My father is a recovering alcoholic who has 36 years sober. Also worked in the treatment community after he got sober. He stopped being a professional businessman and chose to work in recovery. If you take a look at the back of my neck, you'll see I've also walked through some very serious illness, 7 surgeries in 8 months and have utilized pain management to manage my pain, which includes opiates. So I've been in pretty much all of these arenas. And when I looked at your survey, a couple things occurred to me. The primary education, training providers how to appropriately prescribe. I am fortunate. I am part of a pain management team that has a psychologist on staff that offers chronic support through a support group. And they are aware, they knew right off the bat, I'm an addict in recovery. I share that information with them. The provider I chose happens to have a specialty of rehabilitation, so he is educated and understands. But I found that's rare. As a professional assessing pain, the tools that we have are smiley faces. So you're asking people to tell you about their physical pain based on their emotion. It is an ineffective, horrible way to assess. The way that I have to manage my pain addict is a level of honesty very few people can understand. And it isn't a one-pronged approach. I'm fortunate that I sought treatment at Hazleton, where the approach to chronic pain management includes psychological, spiritual, addiction support. It's multifaceted and it's rare, very, very rare. To an author who wrote a book about how addicts can manage chronic pain, there's one. And do you know he's not available today to the public? He works at a clinic in Malibu. So if you've got a few million, you can actually go and get his help. So, you know, it's not available to most people. Fortunately, I had his book. I'm a professional and I understand my program, and I'm managed by a very responsible group of pain management doctors. They drug test regularly. You have to see their psychologist. You know, they don't allow you just to come in and say, my back hurts, even though you can clearly see my back and neck hurt. And they've hurt for a very long time. How to responsibly prescribe for an addict, good. And the tools we currently have when I look at education for providers, they really have no clue, and most of them mess it up. I was allowed to use Suboxone for 2 weeks when I withdrew one time. 2 weeks, that's it, done. Not 2 years, not 2 decades, 2 years. Does it have its place? Do methadone and Suboxone have uses? Yes, they do. To treat chronic pain, they also have uses. But so few providers understand how to really support, prescribe responsibly, even assess people's basic pain. 10 out of 10 pain for me, I'm in a coma. I've been there. This last hospitalization, literally in a coma for 3 days. They couldn't give me very much pain medication. I had had complete hardware replacement of C2 to T2, all the screws, all the bars, and then a harvest of muscle and tissue. My blood pressure was too low for them to give me pain management, so I just passed out and woke up. Passed out and woke up for 3 days. It was not a fun experience, I can tell you that. That is 10 out of 10 pain for me. So is childbirth. Most people don't understand truly what severe pain is, but experience childbirth and you will know. Experience something like this, you will know. So when prescribers ask people how to assess their pain, most people really don't have a good understanding of when pain medication can help them, their own. And again, the tools we have, you're showing people smiley faces. Tell me how you feel emotionally, not necessarily how you feel physically. The understanding that you're not going to eradicate pain. You are going to eradicate agony. Are you comfortable enough to walk? Are you comfortable enough to move? That's a treatment goal, not are you zonked out in the back, stoned out of your friggin' mind, which is what I've seen happen more than once. So I hear treatment. DeVita, others who were talking about the absolute need for treatment. It took us 4 months to get my son into treatment. He was suicidal. He was crazy. He's special needs. He's an insulin-dependent diabetic with executive functioning disorder and autism. You try and find some place that'll take that. Good luck. It took a long time. So family place in treatment, we are extremely active in supporting our son because addicts, we understand how to support him. There wasn't a day we didn't take him to a meeting, get him as much support as possible. Most people don't have that. So the gentleman's point about helping resources and treatment, I have to say it's number one. But I really hope that you will choose to advocate money to help healthcare professionals and other prescribers and other counselors really help people understand how to responsibly prescribe. Because if I don't have pain medication, I don't move. I physically do not move. I can lay in bed and go to the bathroom. That's what I'm capable of without some sort of pain management. So the quality of my life happens to be important to me. I want to be able to move effectively, but I have a lot of support in place that helps me. A really good pain management group, a sponsor, a program of recovery, and a counselor. That's not typical when people are going for pain management, but it could be. You know, there is a way to do this. It's not okay to leave people in physical agony. I've been told I don't need pain medication. I shouldn't necessarily need it. I fractured my hip and didn't ask for pain medication because I was concerned someone might think I was looking for drugs. So I was in agony for 2 weeks before I actually saw a doctor who x-rayed my hip and said, you broke your hip. That's why you hurt. You know, there's so much wrong today with the system. How do you decide where to put the money? It's baffling. It truly is. And I can't say that education is the most important. I truly do believe treatment resources good treatment resource to be the top priority. What is that stuff? My brain is gone. The Narcan that's made available. I keep 2 in my car. I've been in a meeting where somebody's ODing and it's life-saving. So to have that widely available is brilliant. I wouldn't take that away. It's a wonderful resource. Compete for your dollars. I don't envy anyone trying to figure this out. But I'm so grateful you're here asking. You're asking the people who are impacted by this. That's commendable. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Micah. Good, yes. It's probably a good point for me to add that the state is retaining 70% in this fund, this long-range fund, 70% of the 53 million going to them. is going to be in that long-range fund. And although we only get, I say only, 2.3 million out here for our portion of that settlement, we will have the opportunity to still, our organizations can still apply to the state for funding there as well. So they're not just going to keep that whole 53 million by themselves and not allow applications as well. So it'll be a bigger than the 2.3 million. We don't know exactly how that's going to be delved out, handed out, if you will, but we know there is Bill 133 is before the Senate right now. We don't know if they'll get it this year, but it also lays out an allocation of funds that would look something like every year that they get their funding over that 18 years, they're going to put that portion of the funding, 70% of it, into that long-range fund, and then the other 15%, because the state gets 85%, and the 9 that Michael mentioned, the 9 entities, municipalities, we are one of those, get the other 15%. But that 15% that the state is going to have every year, they're going to then, that will be available for applications from the organizations. So we have long range 70%. We'll have the 15% that's going to be available from the states. And then there'll be our portion, which is 15% of the 15% going to 9 entities, and that's 2.3 million. So there'll be a lot more millions at the state level that organizations can apply for. And this needs assessment. I'm also a member of the Governor's Advisory Council on Opioid Remediation, and that was one of their primary recommendations. They didn't mandate it, but primary recommendations is that we, as a municipality, one of the 9 members of this settlement within the state, that we do a needs assessment. And from that needs assessment, then we can use that as leverage for the organizations to come forward to the state level and apply for money there. So thank you. That just reminded me to say that. So, yes. Come on forward, please.
Hi, my name is Leilani, and I agree with what everybody else said, but I really do think that it is important to put some thought into treatment and recovery for teenagers, because for what I have seen in my own life already is that there are kids who are way too young already doing opiates, and it is causing them to drop like flies. And it's scary. It's really heartbreaking when you have a lot of friends and a lot of people that you know in this valley, and you see almost every single kid out here doing some type of drug. And it starts at hey. And as my mom said, if our generation doesn't get the help that we truly do need, then we're not going to survive. And I do agree that prevention and training through schools and harm reduction, it is important. But even for us teens, we already know starting off, even though we aren't mature to really understand it yet, video about how dangerous drugs are, and still we choose to deny that fact. And it hits a point where these kids aren't going to get help until intervention is involved, because that's the only way they will be able to get help. And so it's kind of hard for me to explain a little bit or wrap my head around it all, but intervention needs to be involved. There needs to be more recovery for teens, and that's just what I think. So thank you for your time.
You appreciate it.
You walk away. Could you share with us some prevention strategies that you think might have been more impactful when you were in school? Do you believe presentations from people that are in recovery, parents that have lost children, ER docs and what they see, teens sharing their personal journeys as far as what they had gone through, more of a maybe age closeness rather than adults. So I know you said it was difficult to wrap your head around, and I know that I don't want to put you on the spot,
Oh, no.
but so is there something that you missed, something that we're not doing, something that you would like to see?
I would really like.
I need your help.
I would really like if more kids like ages from more understanding from 12-step programs. I really feel like if more kids understood how to work through it and the dynamics and areas of which it involves in, because addiction isn't always just addiction to a substance, it's underlying trauma and a lot of unhealed scars. And I feel like if a lot more kids had that understanding, I feel like they would be able to see outside of their own little box in their own head, if that makes any sense.
That makes absolute sense, and I really appreciate you mentioning the word trauma. I know it's important for us to move upstream, but I've also heard it's very important to drill down once we're upstream. And drilling down is addressing some of the early trauma, obviously with an appropriate setting. May that be, at a school site in a lawyer's office, but then being able to direct that individual, that teenager, to resources, and schools being trauma informed and realizing triggers that can set youth off. And so before you leave, I would really like to get your contact, maybe an email or something like that. I would really like to be able to have a longer discussion about issues of mental health that youth are facing or lack thereof, issues around anxiety and depression, social media, self-image. And we know that there's lots of different kinds of addiction going on out there. There's just multiple, and then obviously there's many 12-step programs to reach that. I remember at the last meeting, Carl spoke, and I would like him to again tell this group he did make some presentations at a middle school, and some of the insights that he found out, the difference between pain pills and marijuana, if you wouldn't mind sharing that. I think that's really vital information for this audience to know that. And so did you get your name down there? Maybe an email if you feel comfortable, or a phone number?
Okay if I use my mom's?
You can use whatever you feel most comfortable with. I don't want to in any way intrude, or maybe I'll give you mine before the end of the meeting and you can reach out to me. We'll maybe do it that way too. Thanks.
Sure. So, well, first of all, as like a person that has a heart for advocacy, you're the most important person in the room. You're the future of not just like this community, but for you to have the courage to stand up and say like, hey, this matters. Let's do something different. I commend you, and hope that you carry that voice for the rest of your life. Because
It was a little nerve-wracking. It kind of all just flew out of my head as soon as I got up here.
yeah, it's super nerve-wracking. I get it. But I also come from a background where like in schools they said just say no, or they showed you this is your egg. They showed you an egg and was like, this is your brain, and then they scramble it, this is your brain on drugs.
Right,
and
it's
the
like-
reality is like these scare tactics don't work, right?
Yeah,
What I think we need to do is tell people the truth.
Mhm.
That this has been our experience. This is what's out there. This is what happens. This is what detox feels like. This is what you can expect. I think underestimate the um, the the intelligence and wit of our younger generations. And I think if we just tell people the truth, they'll make better decisions. I went to middle school and it's been a couple of years ago, and we interviewed the entire 8th grade class. We just kind of shared our story, like, hey, this is what I went through. This was my experience. And we actually surveyed everybody. And don't quote me on these numbers because I'm kind of shooting in the dark. We surveyed about 150 kids. And of those, like 130 of them said that they had access to prescription drugs. Only 90 of them had access to marijuana. That was eye-opening and just terrifying for me. They also felt that prescription drugs were safer than marijuana because they were doctor prescribed. These are 13 and 14-year-old kids. And when you're looking at a population in our middle school where you're 75-85% of the population of kids can have access to opioids, that's scary. Well, I'm glad since then we've changed some of our laws around how many pills can be prescribed. But I think the reason that Michael was asking you that question is because this committee, and there is some other projects going on. One of them is called Kelsey's Lesson. It's really an intentional way for us to go get honest with students and share lived experience. And I think Michael was hoping for some thoughts and feedback around, what does a 15-year-old or what does a 17-year-old kid want to hear from somebody that's actually going to have value?
From what I notice in not only myself, but a lot of the other kids and addicts is that we won't listen until there is intervention because the mind wants what the mind wants. So sometimes in a lot of the cases, like I do agree how many young kids have access to opiates. It really is truly scary. When I had my friend pass away from an overdose, he was with all of his friends who were like 14, 15, 16, and they had the same shit that he did, but he was just the only one that didn't puke that night. And so it really is a scary thought on how my old group of friends all could have died that night. So I kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah, no, I do agree with that, how it really is scary and how more kids need to be aware.
Can you tell me, I want to dovetail and piggyback on what Carl said about,
Truthful.
the reason Kelsey's Lesson exists is because Kelsey shared with her dad that when she was in high school, all she heard was that alcohol and drugs were bad. End of
Right.
discussion. Never talked about what it's like to be dope sick, and
And
actually,
why it's bad.
yeah, and what happens in the brain.
Right.
So, do you believe facts and data are important? Do you believe that information is valuable? Because I think I heard you say that teenagers, and maybe this is just you, and I don't want to generalize, that they won't listen until they get to a point where they need intervention. So really struggling, not me personally, not with you, in my head, like you were talking about, trying to wrap my head around it, trying to get that message that, I can hit a grand slam with and save the 3 other people on the bases besides the batter.
Right.
So, facts and data important, honesty, accurate information, exactly, the amount of, people that are dying. So anything.
I feel like I agree with what he said. The tactic isn't really working anymore. I do agree that the facts do show sometimes, but a lot of us don't listen to the facts. So I really do believe in honesty and showing how many people have hit that same brick wall, but they're still it's not working for them. So I really do think that honesty is really important there.
When you say not working for them, are you talking about and I don't want to take up a lot of time here, but
Yeah.
this is valuable information. not working, meaning that they're not able to medicate themselves enough to numb the pain? Is that what you're talking?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting to.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Really quick follow-up question. Do you think if we went to the schools and we kind of shared some information and we taught people how to use Narcan, the example that you just shared of losing a friend, do you think your generation and people your age and high school age kids would carry Narcan if they knew that it could prevent an overdose?
I feel like it would be really important to teach to carry Narcan. I really do find that very important. I've been wanting to get a Narcan kit for actually quite some time now.
This
And-
Saturday, there's going to be a recovery barbecue at Nunley Park,
oh,
and right
cool.
next door is my house, not my house.
oh
the
yeah,
place
but like
called-
my house, yeah.
Let's not be confused. We're going to do, I'm actually going to pick up some more Narcan kits tomorrow, and there's going to be training on Saturday from 12 to 4, running along with True North's barbecue recovery.
Oh,
More than welcome. And you know what? Bring your friends. We'll train them all. We'll load them up. And that way you can, be ready if the situation needs that. So it's Saturday from 12 to 4.
that
yeah.
seems cool. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
like to join that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I briefly do a follow-up after listening to Leilani? So my experience with addiction and recovery, I watched my uncle walk through dope sickness when I was 12. I've watched my grandmother detox physically when I was 11. I've been around dope literally my entire life. It did not deter me. So I love, yes, honestly, we'll share what recovery looks like. It's about the only hope, because I got to see some of my family do recovery. I knew where to go. But what Leilani is describing is what every teenager alive, including you all, know. You're going to use, you're going to do it. She's saying, have the help when I'm done. Help me watch my friends not die by giving me Narcan. But there isn't anything. I watched dope sickness. I've been dope sick. None of it is ever going to change the mind of an addict until they make a decision they don't want to live like that anymore. And can we keep them alive long enough to make that choice? What you're doing in the schools, it's not going to change any addict's mind when they decide to pick up. It didn't change mine. I just didn't choose alcohol because I really didn't like that drug. Okay? I didn't choose that until really late in life, like 30. Because every time I drank to black, and I felt really bad for 5 days. So I didn't choose that drug very often. An addict is an addict. We're going to use, period. There's nothing you're going to be able to do to deter us, but you can help us make a decision that will save our lives. Keep us alive long enough to get to the rooms? Yes. Show us an example of what that can look like? Absolutely. But like Leilani, I first used when I was 12. I watched my parents smoke dope in a circle when I was 10. I didn't know what they were doing. And as I said, I've experienced addiction pretty much my entire life, yet I'm a recovering addict. I've destroyed my life more than once. As a teenager, my family paid me to stay away from them because I was so toxic and they didn't have teen rebuild back in the early 70s. That was not an option. Nobody went to rehab. You went to the mental hospital. So having treatment available, keeping people alive long enough to get there, yes. It would be great if you could inspire kids. I've tried it. My own son. He's been around recovery all his life as well. An addict is an addict is an addict. When they have choices of recovery and seeing that that works, yeah. Intervention sometimes, Leilani, makes sense. Dragging people into it sometimes has to be that answer.
Thank you, guys. I think it's really important to note that we're talking about a multi-pronged approach with these 4 multi-prong approach with these 4 selections. And I don't think, I'll speak for myself as a committee member, and I don't think anybody else on the committee would weigh any one more item more important than the other. I think we have adolescents and young people in our schools that are on the fence about substance use. I think we have adolescents and youth that probably suffer from mental health concerns that are unregulated, undiagnosed, and untreated as a result of their home life. And I think that prevention in that environment, education in that environment is going to go a very long way. I also wholeheartedly believe that we need interventions and we need options when they do take that route. You described my story. I grew up in a home filled with recovery. I share recovery with 2 family members that are actively in recovery and a father that passed with 31 years. So I am a child of an addict, a child of an alcoholic. I knew where to go when it was time to go. I'm also one of those kids that was on the fence, and I think with a little bit of better education, I would have had a better idea what I was up against. So I think we need to ensure that we put this out to our community, and this feedback and conversation is so important. I think that we need to make sure that we don't these funds in what we through our lens point, right? I work in recovery. I live in recovery. Everything I do is recovery. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of people who aren't ever going to make the choices that I made, and some education, some programs, and some lessons. And maybe it's a school lesson, maybe it's legislature, maybe it's public service announcements that run for a duration based on a funding amount. I think there's a lot of things that can be done with this money that will have a broad approach to a very multifaceted problem that we're dealing with as a community. So thank you guys all for your input. It's all been really valuable.
Okay, come on up, please.
Well, my name is Mackenzie Fahrenkopf. I'm with the People's Paper and 95.5 The Pass, and I had the privilege of sitting down with Michelle and Michael over at my house for a long duration of time to discuss some of the issues that we could see in not only homes that we've been in ourselves, but as well just different families around. And in reference to what Norm was discussing earlier of the Mat-Su being a family, I could not agree more on to that. I mean, the only way to combat, as Michael puts it, this poisoning that's happening to our community, our loved ones, our family members, whomever, is to come together and stand up against this. And with all of that said, I couldn't agree more. You can't put one over the other. Everything is a domino effect, and that just because some person goes through treatment doesn't mean they're not going to relapse at some point. I've lost friends myself. My mother went through addiction. I had to tell my mom when I was 12 years old, like, I can't be around you anymore because I will fall into this. And she continued to live her life, pushed me to the backside of the burner. And every day I wish I could go back and be there with her, but I know what that could have done to myself. And it already has affected me in a way that I wish it didn't. And I know I'm not the only one. I mean, it's referred to earlier, at least 1 in every 3 people have had issues in their family where they have to go against this. And telling your family members, your loved ones, your friends, whomever it is, that I can't help you. Oh my goodness, there's nothing that like drives your heart into the dirt more. I mean, you want to do anything and everything in your power. And as referred to several times, people got to make that change for themselves. You can't lock them into a room and do all this stuff. And, you know, one of the things that Michael and I got into a discussion were the programs that are going on in the Anchorage School District of those classes, and the story just behind Kelsey. And it's inspiring, and to a point where why we all need to come together before it hits that point. I mean, to be in that position, needing help right there and having access to it, but then not come to you, like, no. And one of the things that we discussed as well was a place where people in need in the moment can reach out to everyone at the same time. And just being completely transparent, we were throwing around some ideas of how we could, and I'd like to get some feedback of what other people think as well, as a let's chat type section or a website or something like that, where all these different entities and nonprofits who work together already and refer each other to fill these rooms that are already at that 100% capacity because they can't take in all these people, where someone can just go in and say, I need help, or my family member, and have everyone who has spots available to be able to respond within that same day, within that same hour, within that same whatever. One of the most moving things that Michael showed me was, I'm sure you guys are aware of what a stevia packet looks like, a sugar packet, and how many people that can kill if it was filled with fentanyl. 500 for those who don't know. And on top of that as well, I mean, I'm not sure how many here are aware of the age group of people who die from overdoses more so than any, but I believe, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 2. No, you're what age group dies from overdoses the most? It's 2, correct? If I'm not mistaken. Gotcha. And then the most fatal, because we were talking about when children grab the packets off the coffee table or whatever it be. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But yeah, with that said, I'd like to see more so than just the Groman and these primary preventions and treatments, harm reduction, recovery, a way for us all to come together, whether that be an event that we all host together. Opioid Awareness Day is September 21st for those who don't know this year. A place where everyone, just like the barbecue that's being held tomorrow, something like that, where all these different entities can come together and host something great and be with one another. I'd love to see that. I mean, we've been in discussions of nonprofits fair, but I think that blows it out of the water. A place for people who can come to find help and just find ways to work with one another. But yeah, with that said, that is my piece.
Wanted to let you know there's a couple websites. And Carl knows them better than I. Open Beds is, and Carl can talk about what that is. And there's another one that anyone can use. I think Open Beds is more of a provider to provider. But then there's one, connectiontreatment.com, that anyone can access. And then you can answer a few questions, and then how far you're willing to travel to find treatment. But Open Beds.
Yeah, I mean, the state has a platform, and the state of Alaska's website does. Unfortunately, it's not extremely accurate. It does call on all these providers to go in and do data entry into it every day. And so Open Beds is a new platform that the state was trying to incorporate, which would allow providers to talk to one another. But again, you'd have to have every provider opted in to utilize it. And so it hasn't really taken off. But there are some local resources. We have the Matsu Opioid Task Force created a resource guide. There are connector groups like Connect Matsu that work primarily in referral. But generally, you've got your kind of core pillar providers out here. And generally, if you call them and they're not able to provide the services that an individual might need, they'll know who to call. We have plenty of work to do on our platforms, unfortunately. But yeah.
Can you say your name again? I did not catch that.
No, you're good. Mac Fahrenkopf, M-A-C-K.
Ah, okay.
Easier
Thanks,
that way.
Mac.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up. We'd love to hear opinions.
Hi, good evening, guys. Thank you all for being here. Obviously, this is Hi, good evening, guys. Thank you all for being here. Obviously, this is something that personally affects all of you, where you probably be at home with your families on Thursday evening. I wrote down a little list. As somebody who is still in a sober living house, who has went through inpatient and the outpatient treatment programs that we offer in the Valley. I'm kind of here just to give my little little piece on what I can offer you guys. I agree with what the younger lady had said about the main focus, I guess, I would think is treatment and specifically for people younger than 18 that are minors. I'm not that young, but I'm also not that old. I'm 26, and I kind of think about what could have been different in my case in school. And I think about to make sobriety attractive. I know for myself, I didn't grow up in a shaky household. I had two parents that are still together. They're well off financially. I never needed anything. I was blessed with that. But smoking weed and doing drugs was cool. That was what all the cool kids did. Whether you were a football player, rode dirt bikes, were a grungy kid, whatever, high school parties were cool. So I think making that more attractive is especially imperative. I know listening to certain types of music made that lifestyle attractive as well. The selling drugs, doing drugs lifestyle is something that you don't really know the effects of until it's too late. I kind of like what he had said. I kind of like what he had said with how we could tackle that. And same with Carl. I grew up, elementary school and given red ribbons and pencils that change color when you touch them. The DARE program, I think, is what it was called. I don't even remember what that stands for. I just remember those two things. I think showing the kids the real truth, maybe videos of people overdosing, real, I would say violence of what happens when what happens when that happens, you know what I mean? But even then, it's kind of hard to say because, we all know if you speed, you can crash and you can die. I mean, but yeah, that's what I have. I know if you speed, you can crash and you can die. I mean, it's that risk that people take. So, but yeah, that's what I have with that. Another thing I'd like to talk about is the judicial system. I know being in treatment, I think the grand majority of the people that I was in there with were court required, court ordered, and as a 2-time felon myself, getting out of the habit of, once I was already down and had gone to jail, breaking the habit of coming home and not just saying screw it. I'm a felon now. Careers are out the window. I'm gonna have to do manual labor myself, or hard work, low paying jobs for the rest of my life. So I'm gonna stick to this the drive to opiate and doing things like that. Let's see. Another thing I guess I could say is that in treatment, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the rat park experiment where they, with the water, one of them has cocaine in it, the other one doesn't, and they kind of stick the rats in a cage, and the rats choose to not drink the cocaine water when they're surrounded with outside things to do with social life. Plenty of things to play with, blah, 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 blah. So I think it's important to also have more recovery and sober activities for the community, specifically labeled sober activity. I think it's important for the people in treatment to, I don't know, gain some sort of like new hobbies or anything like that. Because the thing is that they all have an addictive mind. And if it's not drugs, it's sex. If it's not sex, it's working out at the gym. That addict mindset will stay with you forever. And at least it can be something that's positive. and not negative. I think that's the biggest thing I see. I think that's the biggest thing I see with people in the rooms and people who graduate treatment. They go out and relapse because they don't have something to fill their time that's positive. I think that's a big thing to stress. And last but not least, one thing I feel very strong about is what this lovely lady behind me had talked about is when I was trying to get sober, my main issue for the majority of my substance abuse career, I guess you could say, was alcohol. Towards the end, it was definitely opiates as well. But when going to see a mental health professional and somebody that supposedly deals directly with people with addiction issues, I told her that my main issue was alcohol. I had mentioned nothing about opiates, and she tried, her first thing was Suboxone. It's trading out one bad habit for another. And I see a lot of people in treatment, and I know that's not the treatment center's fault specifically, it's the physicians prescribing it, but people that are there for a meth addiction that are being prescribed, methadone, but mainly Suboxone. And it's, I don't know, how loose it is with these drugs that are supposed to help people with withdrawals and things like that. How loosely it's being prescribed is kind of scary because I know a lot of that stuff ends up back on the street and sold, and it's just kind of ridiculous in my opinion. So I guess educating physicians on that side of the house as well. I think that's really all I got. I probably missed something, but yeah. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Can you give us your name, sir? Sir, can you give us your name?
Oh, Patrick Genter.
Patrick Genter?
Yes,
Patrick,
sir.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, for talking about making sobriety attractive. I know when Carl and James introduce themselves and they talk about being in recovery, they talk about what it means to be in recovery. And I'm always reminded that they always say that, they get to be a good friend, they get to be a husband, they get to be an employee, they get to be a boss, and they have all those things that they didn't have when they were out there gunning and running. So Patrick, I think that, and also you mentioned the idea of, play and just being able to have, also I'm reminded that, we talk about addiction being all about isolation and, recovery being about relationships and connections and being able to have those youth, being able to play together healthy. So I wrote that down. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay, others, please. We are literally here to listen to you. Hopefully you'll get something out of it as well, but we'd love to hear from you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. My name is Christy Hassan-Gonzalez, and I have had the pleasure to work in the substance abuse family here out in the Valley for the last 8 years. I currently work out at DOC. There is a part that's missing between reentry from DOC, and Carl's shaking his head yes. Shaking his head yes. The lack of sober housing for people who are coming out of the system, the lack of support for the clients themselves who, to find employment, to meet all of the requirements that they're supposed to be meeting because of their parole, their probation, whatever. That we are doing our best to try and educate them, address their criminal and addictive thinking. We have in place ability to give Narcan to those who are releasing, who are willing to take it with them. We do have someone who will connect them with medically assisted treatment as well. However, it seems to be a revolving door right now. I have guys that graduate my program that I see back a month, 2 months, unfortunately. And I don't know, I guess I don't have a solution. I just wanted people to be aware that that we're kind of letting them slip through the cracks. So, thank you for listening.
Yes, ma'am. Do you have any ideas, I guess? I know you said, maybe you don't know. My two son-in-laws are both in corrections as well, and they kind of give me some of the same details. But do you see anything talking to the people who come back and talk to you some more about what they say might help?
So it definitely is a commitment and a mindset that you have to make the decision to stay away from the old people, places, and things. And I guess it's just difficult to come out from being locked up for however many years and not have anybody to go back to because your support system is already, not have anybody to go back to because your support system is already, And so if we could somehow figure out a way to have more sober living environments that are well managed, so that they have a fighting chance. And then also to continue to build our sober support system that we have out here, to have more events like True North is always constantly coming up with new events, to keep people interested in like make recovery more attractive, like the young gentleman just said. Hopefully that can make a change, but I don't know. I don't have the answers. I hope you guys can figure some stuff out for us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Maybe you can kind of speak to real quick just to some of the data. From my understanding, our recidivism rate is like in the high 60s, low 70s for the state of Alaska. Lower, 60s,
57%.
Oh, okay.
57%. I had read some research that of those people that recidivate, almost all of them recidivate in the first 30 days. Like once they make it 30 days, then the recidivism rate drops significantly. And so I think like whether that is an exact figure or not, but there seems to be an arch there. The longer they stay out, the less likely they are to return. And so I can definitely see us advocating for some of those like immediate release areas. I think those first 30 days of release, whether it's from a hospital ER, a Department of Corrections facility, a residential treatment center, any of those transitions are certainly pain points throughout our entire behavioral health care system. And we're hopeful that there are some projects that really target those areas. At least I am. I can speak for myself, but those are certainly an area that I think there's a huge need for. And would you say that those are kind of your experiences? You're seeing people go right back if they're going to go back?
Yeah, yes, they do. They go back to what they know, what's quickest and easiest, or the only place that they have to go. And sometimes those are not the most healthy situations. So,
Absolutely.
thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
My name's Brian Brandenburg, and I'm the Executive Director for Alaska Addiction Rehabilitation Services, Nugent's Ranch. I appreciate what all of you are doing. I don't think I'm going to say anything today that you haven't heard already in your previous meetings that you've. I certainly appreciate the passion and the dedication and the willingness to be part of this, to kind of look at what, folks in the community think about where this money should go. $300,000 isn't nearly enough. I mean, 30 million wouldn't be enough, actually. It's a big problem. I have a master's in clinical psych, and I'm a licensed professional counselor, clinical supervisor. I've been in part of the recovery community for 34 years. I worked in the Department of Corrections for 25 years and then ran a multi-county jail down in Oregon for 4. And I worked, speaking to the adolescent problem, I worked at North Star for 2 or 3 years after that. And it certainly is not what it needs to be as far as treatment for adolescents. And then I've been out at AARS for about 1.5 years now. So I've been working with the population you're talking about for, almost 40 years. And it's not, just say, no, here's your brain on drugs. I mean, education, we've tried that, and what we've tried in the past, DARE, right? That was a big thing. I think it's important, what you described in going into the schools. I think in doing like a shared experience sort of thing. I mean, you're gonna impact certainly a section of those kids. They're gonna hear what you're saying. But really, if you could just take out their frontal lobes until they were like 25 or so, and take away their testosterone, that might make a difference, right? Because they're going to make the decisions that they make, and really, it's it starts with the family. If you want to know the truth, is that we require people to take a test in order to drive a car, but anybody can have a kid. I've always thought that parenting should be, kind of almost mandated for, new parents to know how to raise a child, because we base our experience on raising kids on how we were raised. And that's not always the best example. And that has plays into the whole trauma issue and the things that you guys have been talking about to a certain degree. I wish there was an answer. Certainly more treatments, more treatment opportunities for people, education, reentry from the Department of Corrections. We're pretty spot on, Carl. It's when 2010, our recidivism rate was 68%. And, that was under the Schmidt administration. And we started implementing programs that had a positive, evidence-based programs that had a positive effect on that recidivism rate. And you're right, people do within the first, actually, I think it's 3 months, they recidivate at the highest rate. And if you can keep them out that long, they stand a better chance. But part of this is a problem we've created ourselves because we have so many conditions of release for somebody. If anybody has been in jail, I don't know if you guys have or not, but out and there's this list of conditions that you have to meet, and it's impossible, right? I used to complain about this all the time, is how do you expect people to do this? They ain't got a place to stay, they have transportation, but you want them to do all these things? That's crazy, right? You just can't do that. And then within those conditions are special conditions that you have to do in addition to all the rest of this stuff. So we almost, we set people up to fail. And, that's not the intent of the Department of Corrections. The intent is to help folks rehabilitate, if you will, or habituate, habilitation, I'm sorry, to learn things that they never learned before so that when they get out, they can make better choices. And they do need housing and jobs and training and skill building and an opportunity to make it in the community. And that just doesn't happen like it needs to. I've talked to folks in the department. I haven't been affiliated with them for a few years, but there is a need for housing, transitional housing for offenders coming out. And I certainly am willing to, do what I can with our facility and where we're at to, something like that. And so I'm in talks with folks about that possibility. But 300 grand, you know, I appreciate you guys doing this, and I hope that you find some viable, productive, evidence-based solutions that you can funnel that money into that has an impact. And I think that in what we do, and I agree with that. I think that, you know, there's a tremendous amount of collaboration in what we do. And I agree with that. I think that, you know, there's a tremendous amount of collaboration between all the service providers to try to meet the needs of the folks that live out here. At AARS, we get 250 referrals a year. 50 of them are from the Valley. And the hardest decision that I have to make on a daily basis is to say no to somebody, you know, because I'm full. I don't have any beds. I don't want to say no, you know. And getting somebody to that place where they're willing is critical, right? Because they're at that place of desperation, right, that a lot of us have been to, where that's the point that you're going to make that decision, not before then and not after then. And so when somebody says, yes, I'm ready, can I go? And you have to say, no, not today, maybe next week or next month, right? And what happens? They're back out using again, living the life. So anyway, I didn't tell you anything you didn't know. Any questions for me?
I did hear that the recipient rate, maybe you can educate me, that 18 to 26-year-olds is closer to 70 or 75%.
The overall, I don't know if I don't know if the department, we never broke down like that. The overall for sentenced offenders, because there's a huge pretrial population that we have. And for sentenced offenders, it was 67, 68%, and it's now 57, 58%. That's the last number that I heard. And so they track it pretty well. We didn't really start doing a good job of figuring out how to do that until 2010. And we really started dialing it down and looking at what that looks like. But pretrial, I mean, that's another thing, the whole, well, it's a different topic, but the bail system and how we, you know, unjustifiably keep people rated when they're, you know, innocent until proven guilty, right? But if you don't have money, you're staying in jail. It's unfortunate. So you have two boys that work in corrections officers. Oh, good for them. It's a good career.
And my grandson just went in here about 3 months ago, so
Oh, good
he's a
for him.
corrections officer too.
Yeah. Are they at Goose Creek?
Oh, all three are at Palmer.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We just opened that back up. So, all right. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute, Carl.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for all the work that you guys have been pouring into Nugent's Ranch. It's a really special place, and from a provider's perspective, and also from a perspective of somebody in the recovery community, we can see the shift, and it's attributed to the team that you've got out there. And just thank you for being a part of that and doing that work.
Well, thank you, Carl. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. Well, let's see. If I look over at the gentleman in the striped shirt, would you like to testify, sir?
No, but thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all. All the rest of you have testified. We appreciate that. You by far have had the most interaction with the panel, with the committee, of any of the three sites we have been at. And I appreciate all that. I've got 3 pages of notes scribbling like crazy, and I probably could have had 10 we have been at. And I appreciate all that. I've got 3 pages of notes scribbling like crazy, and I probably could have had 10 if I could have written faster. But they have the job now to at least come up with this, the needs assessment and prioritize. And as many of the folks tonight and some of you have said, we need money. We need much more money than we have, and we need it in all 4 categories. But I appreciate your inputs, and it'll be up to the committee now to come up with the decisions and then submit those to the assembly. But any last comments from the committee members? I'll start with you, Michael.
Again, thank you for coming and sharing. It's been a privilege and an honor to be able to listen to our community. And I have heard it more than once that Mat-Su has definitely stepped up and collaborates and partners. And I think that alone is admirable, because I've heard other communities still struggle with that. And again, I just want to thank all my colleagues sitting up here and their dedication to this. And so thanks again for coming.
Okay, Carl, please.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming. I know it's dinner time. So I very much appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this.
Okay.
I'll just echo everything that everybody else has said. Thank you guys all for taking the time to be here and the courage it took to come up to the microphone. It's not a comfortable feeling for a lot of folks. For what it's worth, it's not any better from this side of the table. So thanks for what you guys are doing and taking the time to do it.
Thank you. Leslie.
I will just say thank you as well to each of you who have shared your personal stories and your experiences. Thank you as well to each of you who have shared your personal stories and your experiences related to this. I think it's been really helpful to kind of hear the real life stories behind this and see your faces, and continue to allow us to have your perspectives to just kind of give us something to think about as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Dawn?
I agree with everybody else. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your stories with us. It is very helpful to hear from our community. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. Thank you all on the committee and the audience for participating. I think all of us are interested in making the lives of our citizens out there better. And most of you are involved in some way or other in doing that, and I really appreciate that. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And thanks to you guys back there that come into all these meetings and set all this stuff up and make all the mics work. I appreciate you guys being out here to help us do that.
Amen, Carl. Thank you. Yes.